Benedict, I'm sorry. A very good morning to you. I can't really stop laughing at this point in time.
Don't worry, I'm listening to all of this and I'm laughing as well.
I mean, I was talking to my boss the other day, and he said the great thing about this show now is that you're not really angry anymore. You've kind of got past anger. It's kind of just everything's ridiculous, because it is ridiculous. How on earth could Starmer fire her, knowing that she was a convicted fraudster when he hired her? What's the difference? You know, the fact that we all now know that she's a convicted fraudster, why does that mean he has to fire her?
I honestly, I'll be honest, actually, like listening to that clip back again, saying she'll have to resign. She's resigned.
It was 5 minutes. 5 minutes after I said it, she was gone.
I was going to say, the genie that kept on granting Keir Starmer every wish he possibly wanted on the campaign trail has turned against him very forcefully.
It has.
We should have seen this coming the second that he said, I am going to restore standards in public life. Everybody should have just got out their spreadsheet and gone, right, what are the odds of this minister for this, having to resign for this, because it's all going to go horribly wrong. Yeah. Tempting fate like that. It's nice to know, though, that there are things that you can be forced or asked to resign for in this government, because, as you pointed out earlier, you can go through a great big list of things for which they'll go, it's not a big deal. Yeah. Lying on your CV, giving away sovereign territory, it's not a big deal. Yeah, that's all fine. But honestly, look, it's been handled very quickly. That's perhaps the first thing that's been sort of nipped in the bud very quickly. But as you say, if this was known to him already, this hasn't blindsided him, what on earth was he doing appointing her in the first place? This is the standard that you're going to hold.
And let's not forget, this is the woman who, when she first came in, completely and utterly pledged her troth, if you like, to the unions. By the way, I believe that she was actually helped out to the tune of several tens of thousands of pounds by ASLEF, who were big donors to the Labour Party, but also particularly big donors to her in person, I believe. And she's only settled the ASLEF train driver strike by giving them a massive pay rise of something like 15%, which they weren't even asking for. They then turned around and said, actually, that's fine, but on Monday we're going back on strike again. She's complete. And somebody said to me earlier this morning, it's the kind of ironic that the Transport Secretary has been thrown under the bus.
Yeah. I agree. They can't even do sort of being criminal geniuses particularly well. It's like, well, thank you for giving us this money. We'll take a bit more. At which point her face just slightly droops and goes, oh dear, I should have seen this coming. But this is, I'm afraid, going to be what keeps on happening, is that there will be a sort of a slow, steady drip of ministers doing silly things, saying silly things, and possibly having to resign. There was a very little scrutiny, actually, relatively placed on Labour in the build-up to this election, partly because the Tories were in such a bad state. And they were quite literally commanding the news cycle because they kept on dropping the ball. It was impossible actually to ignore. And I think Labour really did get in slightly under the radar, so to speak. You will see a lot more of these sorts of stories, I think, popping up.
Yes.
And even things that
let's not forget, I mean, the Lord Alley scandal kind of disappeared because something else happened. It didn't disappear because we stopped asking questions. It was because the whole disaster of this Labour government was so ridiculous that we moved on. But I'm determined to go back to the Lord Alley scandal because I still want to know exactly what he was doing in Downing Street, exactly what his role was when he had a pass to go in and out of government meetings, and exactly what he expected to get for his, £100,000 donation to effectively Keir Starmer's lifestyle.
And also the fact that people in his office seem to have a say in the selection process as well. Again,
exactly.
Only certain media outlets and journalists were paying attention to that during the election cycle, the furore about people being parachuted into safe seats and all that sort of thing. And again, people were paying attention to the Tories doing it because people like Richard Oldham were trying to do it and everybody was going, hang on, this seems a bit of a stitch-up. But they was not quite picking up on the fact that there was a lot of anger within the Labour Party itself that this was happening. Talked about it. I think Michael Crick talked about it quite a lot, but actually the BBC certainly didn't cover it. But people in Lord Alley's office were involved in that selection process as well. So you're right that there are questions that still need to be answered there. But as I say, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the stuff, this Louise Haigh story, this was something that Guido Fawkes journalists went after. This is not necessarily something that the big newspapers are going after. The BBC certainly aren't investigating this. It's still very much on the fringes. And we're still not even at the 200-day mark yet of this new government. And they're already in these really, really basic amateur hour kind of situations where it transpires this person's lied, this person's lied. Yeah, honestly, normally there's supposed to be a little bit of a period where governments have a bit of a honeymoon stage.
they've had no respite, because every single day something else happens, which is even more ridiculous than the thing that went before. And they continue, and Starmer continues to make ludicrous statements on, sort of publicly, where yesterday he was talking about immigration. The clip we played you earlier was from before he was actually Prime Minister, but talking about the idea that, we were going to restore, public faith in public service. And I mean, even more ridiculously, before Louise Haigh entered politics, we discover she was a special constable in the Metropolitan Police, serving between 2009 and 2011 in the South London borough of Lambeth, which is, ironically, where she committed her heinous crime. Right? And Jeremy Corbyn appointed her in 2017 as a shadow policing minister.
Oh, I love it. It's just the levels of farce. Who said that British comedy is dead? It's just not something to see. It's just in real life.
It's absolutely tremendous, isn't it? And I mean, let me just read you, because I love this. This is the opening paragraph of her resignation letter, in which she doesn't actually say she's resigning. She says that she was mugged as a 24-year-old woman. The experience was terrifying. I reported the incident to the police. I gave the police a list of my possessions that I believed had been stolen, including my work phone. Sometime later, I discovered that the handset in question was still in my house. I mean, I'm sorry, I've had my phone stolen recently, and as I said earlier, the reason I knew it was stolen was because a man actually took it out of my hand and rode down the street on it on a moped, right? And I could follow and track where it was. She apparently was out without her phone, and normally speaking, when you don't have your phone with you, you're in a sort of blind panic going, I better get home and get my phone. She discovered that not only had her phone not been stolen, but it was at home all the time.
I mean, at least she had the good grace not to list, I don't know, a Matisse as missing or anything like that. It was just a you really could have gone to town on it.
Before you say that, maybe we should see the entire rap sheet of exactly what she said was stolen, because she was working for an insurance company at the time. So it was almost as though, and we're told that it was because she wanted to get a new phone. And again, as I said, when you want to get a new phone, normally you just go online and order a new phone.
like a normal person, but
as opposed to pretending that you've been mugged and the phone's been nicked off you. I mean, it's just amazing.
It is, but honestly, as I say, this is that sort of brazenness that we're going to keep on seeing it time and time again. There's not quite enough discipline, I think, in the party. This is something that Starmer was supposed to be known for, his discipline, but it does seem that he himself is sort of letting really silly things slide. He seems to jump on things like anti-Semitism within his own ranks very quickly. Good, but criminality or dishonesty or things like that, it's almost like he thinks, well, that can be given a bit of a pass because it's not quite actual racism.
Right.
Which, I suppose it's nice to know what the standards are. But, I mean, honestly, I think things are going to get very difficult for Labour. And I think a lot of these very new and experienced MPs are going to be put under the cosh quite a bit. Much in the same way as all MPs were put under the cosh during the expenses scandal and suddenly found their lives being gone over with a fine-tooth comb. I suppose the good thing for a lot of these MPs is, in a couple of hours, it looks like they're going to be able to go to their GP and say, God, things are getting really tough. And the GP is going to turn around and go, well, have you considered killing yourself? There is a way.
Well, so, exactly right.
Look on the bright side.
But there is a sense, isn't there, that this government doesn't have anybody really running it. It seems as though there's no collective kind of, point to it. They all go off and do their own thing. We heard that Steve Reed, for example, the Environment Secretary of State, wasn't told about the farming manoeuvres in the budget until the day before, so he couldn't really prepare a sort of response to it. It looks as though, Rachel Reeves does her own thing, claims that she's an economist when she isn't, decides to rewrite her CV when nobody else knows what she's doing. Angela Rayner going off to see the Pope in Rome for no apparent reason in the middle of, what could be considered to be a pretty much crisis in this country. He doesn't really feel like he's leading anybody, does he?
I mean, I quite like the mental image now of Angela Rayner turning up at the next cabinet meeting and just sort of riding across whatever Keir Starmer says and say, well, you say that, Prime Minister, but I've spoken to the Holy Father and he has a lot to say. God has interceded.
I see her more as sort of an exorcist figure with some holy water, sort of spraying it on people, whenever they get in her way. But
this is a missed opportunity if she doesn't turn up in robes to the next Deputy Prime Minister.
Absolutely. A couple of texts have come in. Woodsy says, Mike, I'm surprised she didn't know her mobile hadn't been stolen when she was calling the police with it to report it stolen. And Steve says, come on, Mike, leave poor Louise alone. One little mistake about her phone and everybody wants to Nokia.
Yeah.
I know that's really lame, sorry, but I had to read it.
Oh, well. At least he tried.
I did, yeah, and so did Steve. I mean, where are we going to go? I mean, it's almost impossible now, though, I find, and we've been doing this a long time, you and I, talking about politics. I find it impossible to know, when I come back to work on Monday, what the big story is going to be. But there will be one. There will be some probably massive scandal. I still think there's a massive scandal hiding somewhere in the undergrowth that somebody is going to unveil. And this is a good example of exactly the kind of thing that the newspapers should have dug up before the election, but didn't.
I think, yeah, you're exactly right that there's so much that's just they've been allowed a free pass. I think you're right that there is probably at least one major scandal featuring somebody very senior in the government. And, it would be wrong for us to sort of say it'll affect the Prime Minister or it'll affect the Chancellor. But I think we all sort of know that these things aren't brewing. The question, I suppose, is what happens first? Is it the historic scandal that breaks forth? Or is the scandal, in fact, that they do something silly in real time? I still don't think the full ramifications of the Chagos Island deal are out there in the public view. The fact that the United States are trying to torpedo it, I think, should tell you that there's, there are some bad things going on there. Be it to do with the farmers, be it sort of a series of rolling strikes, be it a gaffe to do with that. I don't know. Again, Dominic Grieve writing in the Times a couple of days ago that the assisted suicide bill would breach the ECHR. That would be a hell of a funny thing to happen. There are going to be gaffes that happen both historically and in real time, and that's the only thing that you and I have to predict. Which one's it going to be? Is it going to be that actually comes towards us or comes back from the past? It's great entertainment for us, but we also have to remember this is the running of the country we're talking about, and we were promised a government of adults, and we've had the exact opposite so far.
Absolutely right. It's been a complete shambles. Benedict, good to talk to you. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator there.